I want to tell you about a Tuesday morning that felt completely ordinary from the outside. I woke up at the same time, made the same coffee, I opened my laptop like any other day, but before I checked my email, I opened my investment account, which I did every first of the month, and the balance had crossed $750,000 overnight. I didn't celebrate, I didn't call anyone. I sat with the number for a long time and felt something I genuinely wasn't prepared for. Not excitement, not relief, something quieter than both of those. It was the feeling of realizing that the rules I had been playing by for 17 years had just quietly changed, and nobody had warned me that this specific number was where that happened. My name is Anderson, and this video is about the threshold that almost no financial content addresses directly, because most content is built for people trying to get started, not for people approaching the number where the entire nature of wealth building transforms. If you're anywhere on the path towards $750,000, what I'm about to show you will change how you think about every year between now and that morning. Here's the belief I carried into that Tuesday morning that the number immediately dismantled. I believed that wealth building was a continuous process with a consistent logic. Save, invest, compound, repeat. The rules that got you from 0 to 100,000 were the same rules that would carry you from 100,000 to 1 million. Discipline looked the same at every stage. Patience looked the same at every stage. The game was the same game, just with bigger numbers. This belief served me well for 17 years, and it became subtly wrong in ways I wasn't equipped to recognize at exactly the moment it mattered most. Because at $750,000, something fundamental shifts. The portfolio stops being primarily a savings vehicle, a place you build by adding to it, and becomes primarily a growth engine. One that runs whether you feed it or not. One that, left alone, begins producing wealth at a rate that has almost no relationship to your monthly contribution. And that transition from builder to steward requires a completely different psychological and strategic framework, one that most people never develop because most financial content stops before it gets there. Let me make this concrete with the math that stopped me cold that Tuesday morning. $750,000 at 9% average annual return produces $67,500 in year one from growth alone, without a single additional contribution. $5,625 per month arriving because of a process that has been running quietly in the background for nearly 2 decades. But here's what makes this number genuinely staggering when you see it clearly. That $67,500 doesn't just arrive and stop, it gets added to the principal. Which means the following year, you're earning 9% on $817,500, producing $73,575. The year after that, 9% of $891,075, producing $80,196. You haven't contributed a cent in this scenario. The portfolio crossed $1 million in under 4 years entirely on the momentum of what was already there. This is the threshold where compounding stops being a concept you understand intellectually and becomes a force you can physically observe happening faster than you can manually keep up with. Your monthly contributions, the discipline that built everything, become almost mathematically irrelevant compared to what the existing balance is generating on its own. And that realization changes everything about how you should be thinking, behaving, and making decisions at this stage. The crack in my old framework appeared about 3 months after that Tuesday morning. I had been operating with the same contribution mindset for 17 years. Hit the monthly number, reinvest the dividends, don't touch it. These were the rules, and they had worked. But 3 months past the threshold, I noticed something that felt disorienting. My portfolio had grown by more in those 3 months from returns alone than I had contributed in the entire previous year. My $1,000 monthly contribution, the discipline I had maintained through every market dip and lifestyle temptation for nearly 2 decades, was now producing less than 2% of my portfolio's monthly growth. I was still treating the contribution as the primary mechanism when it had long since been replaced by something I had built, but was no longer truly driving. This wasn't a reason to stop contributing, but it was a signal that the primary work had shifted. I was no longer building the engine. I was managing it. And managing an engine requires different skills, different attention, and a completely different relationship with risk than building one does. The first thing that changes at 750,000 is your relationship with volatility, and most people get this exactly backwards. Earlier in the accumulation journey, market downturns are genuinely good news for disciplined investors. When the market drops 20% and you're contributing $1,000 per month, you're buying more shares at lower prices. The downturn accelerates long-term accumulation. The emotional difficulty of watching the balance drop is the price you pay for buying cheaply. At 750,000, a 20% market correction isn't a buying opportunity in the same way. It is a $150,000 reduction in your balance. On paper, temporary, if history is any guide, but $150,000 is a number that now has psychological weight it didn't have at earlier stages. The mistake most people make at this threshold is one of two opposites. Either they become so anxious about protecting the balance that they shift to conservative positions, bonds, cash, low-yield instruments, and inadvertently suffocate the compounding engine at the exact moment it's running fastest. Or they become so confident from years of success that they concentrate positions, chase higher returns, and introduce risks that the portfolio's size can no longer absorb cleanly. The discipline at this stage is neither of these. It is staying the course with a broadly diversified allocation and understanding that volatility is now the rent you pay for the compounding engine to keep running. The engine doesn't stop needing fuel just because it's large, it just needs a different quality of patience. If this is landing differently than what you expected from the title, take 2 seconds and hit the like button. It genuinely helps the channel reach people who need this conversation. The second thing that changes is the opportunity cost calculus on every major financial decision. Earlier in the journey, spending $50,000 from your investment account for a business opportunity, a property down payment, or a significant life decision was painful but recoverable. You'd reset some progress, extend the timeline, the compounding engine would be rebuilt. At $750,000, withdrawing $50,000 doesn't just remove $50,000 from your balance. At 9% annual return over 20 years, that $50,000 becomes $296,650. You aren't spending $50,000, you are spending nearly $300,000 from the engine's future output. This doesn't mean never touching the portfolio. It means every withdrawal now carries a genuine 6-to-1 cost ratio that simply didn't exist at earlier stages. And making decisions at this threshold without running that calculation is one of the most expensive things a person can quietly do to their own financial future. The framework I use: before any withdrawal above $10,000, I calculate the 30-year multiple at 9%. I let that number sit for 72 hours. Then I decide. Not because the answer is always no, but because the decision deserves to be made with the real cost visible, not the face value. The third shift is the one nobody in financial content ever addresses directly, and it may be the most important. At $750,000, your portfolio has become large enough that your behavior around it begins affecting people beyond yourself: a spouse, children, aging, parents. The texture of decisions made at this threshold ripples outward in ways that earlier financial decisions simply didn't. This is not a reason for anxiety, it is a reason for clarity. Wills, beneficiary designations, account structures, estate planning conversations, these are not morbid exercises. They are the administrative infrastructure that ensures the engine you spent 17 years building serves the purpose you actually intend, rather than being partially consumed by processes you never considered. Most people delay these conversations because they feel premature or uncomfortable, but the 750,000 threshold is precisely when they stop being premature. The balance is now large enough to matter significantly to the people in your life. Treating it accordingly is not a burden. It is the final form of the discipline that built it. Here's what I would tell the version of me from that Tuesday morning, the one sitting with the number and feeling quietly unprepared for what it meant. This week, recalculate your asset allocation with fresh eyes, not through the lens of building, through the lens of stewarding. Does your current allocation reflect the role your portfolio now plays in your financial life? If it was designed for aggressive accumulation at $30,000, it may need recalibrating at $750,000. This month, run the 30-year multiple on any significant financial decision currently under consideration, every option, every withdrawal. Let the real cost be visible before the decision is final. Then, have one conversation you've been postponing with a spouse, a financial advisor, an estate attorney, not because the situation is urgent, because the balance has crossed the threshold where postponing that conversation is itself a financial decision with consequences. And keep contributing, not because the contribution is still the primary driver, but because the habit of discipline is what built the engine and habits maintained through the threshold are what protect it on the other side. 17 years of quiet Tuesdays, 17 years of contributions that felt too small to matter, and market dips that felt too large to survive. 17 years of choosing the engine over the upgrade, the future over the present, the unsexy over the obvious. And then one ordinary morning coffee, laptop, the same routine, a number that changed the rules of the game entirely. That morning is already on your calendar, you just haven't reached it yet. My name is Anderson. Keep the contributions running.